Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. South Africa has some of the most superb manganese geology in the world, and a new mine in the Northern Cape is looking to capitalize on this fortune. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Can you give us a brief background into this new development?
Yeah, I was down in the Kalahari and watching, the mining luminary, Brian Gilbertson, who is the founding CEO of BHP Billiton, and also a former Robben Island prisoner and turned businessman and really doing well, and chairman of the company which owns this new mine, Saki Makazoma, getting together. And it's interesting to see how reconciliatory the new South Africa is, because here was Saki Makazoma coming out of the struggle. And there was Brian Gilbertson really coming out of Gencor, which was like an Afrikaner-orientated type mining house, but doing so for the benefit of South Africa. And this is in an impoverished area of the Northern Cape, close to Mamatwan, a very good address, because we know that BHP Billiton already own Mamatwan mine, and it's got a manganese content of about 44%. It's really good. They're going to start mining. They turned the sod at the Tshipi mine. And Tshipi Borwa means beautiful south in the local language, and they're in the south of this Kalahari manganese field, which is the most valuable manganese field in the world by a long shot, not only in value but volume. And people who arrived from abroad for the opening of Tshipi mine just marveled at the geology. Obviously they've been studying it up, and OMH, which is listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, is an investor in Ntle, which is the owning mine. They've got quite a big stake in that. So they obviously saw the worth of this continuous seam and thick seam of manganese. And one person said, it's so thick, it's like standing beneath a tall building and saying, well, this is all manganese. And, miners aren't used to that sort of thickness of seam. So you've got this fantastic combination of people. You've got Saki Makazoma. He's also the deputy chairman of Standard Bank. I mean, he's deeply steeped in business, in board level activities, now getting his hands dirty, in the grubby sands of the Kalahari. But he's joined by a veteran in the business, a person who really has had vision. Brian Gilbertson saw the boom coming. And that's why he morphed our Gencor, which is our second biggest mining house, into Billiton. And then there was the merger with BHP Billiton, which he was so deeply involved with. And he ended up as CEO of BHP Billiton. And during his period as CEO in 2002, he recalls, just as he was opening the Tshipi mine in Kalahari, in 2002, he cut the ribbon at an area in the Pilbara of Australia, because as head of BHP Billiton, he cut that ribbon. And that was the start of an infrastructure setup that has brought in so much wealth for Australia, because it not only did they invest in that mine at the time ahead of the real Chinese boom, but the government of Australia also invested in railway facilities and port facilities to expand. And that was the starting point for growth at a compound rate of 10% a year for the iron ore industry in Australia, which has done so fantastically for that country. South Africa, in contrast, didn't anticipate this Chinese boom well enough. And in the same period that Australia was growing compoundly at 10% a year, we in South Africa, our iron ore industry was only growing at 2% a year. And it was all about infrastructure and what constraints infrastructure can be. So the project manager on this new mine had a good and interesting description of this project. He said, this project is a big logistics project with a small mine attached. And so he was trying to emphasize that unless the government comes to the party with logistics, you can have the best manganese in the world, and this is wonderful quality manganese. You can have the highest volume of manganese in the world, but it's going to be stranded, and nobody's going to make anything out of this. Because the big story is how you get it onto the rail, how you get it to the port, Then you get it shipped. And of course, then you still got to negotiate with your customers. But they've set up a very good starting point. They think it's going to be the start of a new era for them and for South Africa, because they see a wave of demand coming for quality manganese. So just as in 2002, Brian Gilbertson saw this wave of demand coming for iron ore, and it arrived. He sees a wave of demand now coming for quality manganese, because you have a situation in China where they've got manganese, but the quality is low. And when the quality is low, you need a lot of energy to actually smelt it and beneficiate it. And China hasn't got that sort of energy. So they are looking to higher quality, and that is opening the door for South Africa, which could then, the Chinese might say, look, instead of all our low quality, let's import this, which would mean it would oust all that low quality. It will take the place of that, which will give an opportunity for strong growth, provided the rail is there.
Now, on that note, the geology is obviously described as superb,
Yes.
but all good things have bad problems sometimes.
Yes.
What are the main challenges here?
Well, we had the newly reinstated chief executive of Transnet Freight Rail there, Siyabonga Gama. And it was very interesting to interview him, which I did. I collared him at the banquet in the evening, because I wasn't going to let him get out of my grasp, and I found him very eager to talk. And what he was saying is that he's tackling the rail issue with national urgency. It's not a question of if he's going to have a heavy-hauled rail to the port of Kucha, but how he's going to do it. That is the big issue, because you need to do this quickly now. If you're going to, it should have been done already. There was an idea that we should export the manganese along the same line that we export the iron ore, the Sishen-Saldanha line, because that is a dedicated line, and people thought, well, you can have separate trucks, taking the manganese and separate it at the port, and you can use that same line. He's now saying, look, let's go the other way. Let's go towards Port Elizabeth, because what have we got there? We've got a deep water port, that is underutilized, and an area that needs to be boosted. You've got a railway line there already. It's a general freight line. Augment that line, turn it into a heavy haul line. It can still carry the general freight, but it can also carry the heavy haul manganese, and get that down there quicker. And because the line is there, it's probably going to be a quicker process of sorting it out. The distance is shorter. And what is also anticipated is that the Kucha Industrial Development Zone might become a manganese hub. And we know that South Africa is looking for beneficiation at the moment. But how do you beneficiate when you haven't got energy? Again, how do you export when you haven't got rail? The state has got to provide that, and hasn't been doing so adequately. How do you beneficiate if you haven't got energy? The state was meant to provide that, and they've seen to be lacking. Now they've got to come to the party. What they see is that there could be a hub developing there for manganese. There could be a smelter there, because we see another black-owned company, and this is a black-owned company we're talking about, this startup in the Kalahari, which is again a feature of this new manganese era that we're entering into. We saw UMK also black-controlled. We see Kalahari also was black-controlled, I think, until ArcelorMittal came in. And now we see this Tshipi mine, also black-controlled. So more than half the shares are held by South Africa's blacks. And that we are entering into a new era here, where it seems to be like a tailor-made for the new South Africa, and the people involved also representing the new South Africa. And we've got this treasure chest of manganese, and we need to turn it to account, but we need that energy if we're going to beneficiate, because what would happen is it would go down on this heavy ore line to the Kucha port, and then in the Kucha industrial zone, before being exported, it would be smelted, so that it can be turned into ferromanganese and higher value manganese if possible, so that that becomes a value-added export. In the same way we've seen with chrome. We don't export raw chrome, we export a ferrochrome, which is a 10 times value uplift, and which provides more jobs, but it uses more energy. And that's where we'd have to probably wait for the Medupi and Kusuli power stations to come in to play. And we hope, as with the description the project manager gave us, this is a very big logistics project with a small mine attached. We don't want to end up in Kucha with, this is a very big energy project with a small smelter attached. It's got to be of matching significance. So there's a lot of work to do, but nowhere in the world is there development without steel. And manganese is an essential agreement in steel. You cannot make steel without manganese. And it seems as though the world is going to make a lot of steel going forward. If you watch Asia, you see Chinese being like a big vacuum cleaner, as Brian Gilbertson says, sucking up all these metals and minerals. India about to do the same, possibly a decade behind. And then you've got the other Asian countries starting to awaken because of their proximity to China and the influences had on them. So they are expecting an ongoing demand for this, for manganese. And when you've got that good horizon, and steel is growing at a certain point a year, you can start investing confidently, as they did with chrome, because chrome is an essential part of stainless steel. They could see what the demand for stainless steel was looking like, and that gave them confidence to invest. We now see demand for steel, going forward, looking strong. That gives you confidence to invest in perhaps a little bit of a value upliftment. But in the meantime, there's no energy out at this Tshipi mine. So they're going to have to just, as the Australians do, get an excavator, dig it out, put it on a train, get it to port as fast as possible, and off to your market. And that's how they will start this. But one hopes, as Brian Gilbertson said, when he cut that ribbon, it was actually the start of a new era, because along the line was coming this Chinese demand. Hopefully, as he turned the first sod, it will be the start of a new wave of demand for manganese, and South Africa should be right there. That's why I agree with Siyabonga Gama. This should be seen as a matter of national urgency.
Yes. Now, what type of benefit will this have for that particular region?
Well, as Brian Gilbertson says, he can remember a previous era when he was a schoolboy and his father was called out to the then undeveloped Free State goldfields and had to put in, water infrastructure so that people could have water in this newly found goldfield. And he used to go to school barefoot. And because it was a rudimentary area, startup place, the schooling wasn't too good until the gold mines started moving. Then all of a sudden he got a very strict principal who said to him, "You better do better." And he said, that set him off to be able to get a bursary so that he could go to university to equip him to become the world's top miner. Now he's saying, he's dishing out bursaries now. He sees these same kids around there. He believes that this mine will stimulate a better education. And that he's already, I think they handed out 120 bursaries to the people in the area to get them educated. That's what they want to do. So that maybe there's a future, Brian Gilbertson knocking around in there that will keep this going in time to come. And so he's saying that as a kid, he saw what infrastructure could do. It could start stimulating, and there was a lot of commercial enthusiasm in the area because of suddenly there was gold being mined because the water was there in the Free State, and it set off a new wave of prosperity in the area. He's hoping that this will do the same.
Well, we hope for the best.
Thanks.
You very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insights into what's happening in the mining world.